from one conversation to the other, the conversation on the Bank of Ghana's closure of 23 savings and loans companies is still ongoing. We have heard from a number of industry players and analysts on how this will work out. Let's hear from the receiver, Eric Nana Nipah. And this is a conversation with George Riafe of our business desk.
There are two main streams of payments that we are looking at, sources of payments. We are looking at amounts voted by governments, which we don't know currently. All right. But then there is a other stream of potential payments. Those relate to the assets of the companies that are being resolved. You know, and I did mention that it's my duty to secure these assets. It's my duty to realize them. So it's for me to realize these assets. And when I have realized these assets, I ought to be making distributions to the body of creditors or depositors in order of ranking set out by the Act. Okay, so there is every indication that some of them may have so much in there to go around. Okay, so that is what we should also be looking at.
Help me out in what the legal ranking gives out in terms of who should be settled first. Maybe the first 5 people pay their loss if anything is realized today.
Right. If anything is realized from the assets of the company, the very first to be settled, if the institution has a claim, is Bank of Ghana. Bank of Ghana comes in as number 1. Okay. We have statutory payments like GRA and SNIT. They come in as well. Okay. And then we have, of course, we have employees at some point. And employees have 2 main types of claims. They have the historic claims, and then they have their severance. And then they have their salaries. All right. Salaries are preferred to some extent up to a certain point in time, leading up to the receivership. Okay, those are preferred. Those, when we say preferred, they come up higher in ranking. So they come in. But the severance component, which is historic, falls quite low down the ranking order. So we have employees. And then, having considered the employees, depositors come in, and other creditors and so on and so forth. And these are creditor claims as at the date of receivership. One thing we haven't taken into consideration are the post-receivership expenses. All right. They have super priority status over and above these rankings. And therefore, if, for example, I go for a facility from Bank of Ghana to pay staff's allowances, we don't pay salaries, we pay allowances, right? When I realize assets, I would have to refund or repay Bank of Ghana before I look at this order of payments, because they are post-receivership expenses, and they come in as number 1.
So I'll be coming back to the staff and the payment of severance and all those and some blah, blah. When I had an interview with the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, somewhere in July, he was saying that about 2 to 3 billion is being set aside for this whole process. As to whether it's been realized, that's another case altogether. But I'm looking at the microfinance case. Obviously, George Riafe, if he has the money with any of these institutions, he's not assured of 100% payment of that money.
Well, you can't say that. It depends. There are 347 microfinance companies whose licenses have been withdrawn and who are going through the throes of receivership. I must mention that based on our interactions with some of them, close to 20 of them, 20 microfinance operators have approached me. We have negotiated, and they are willing and able to pay all their depositors 100%. Not only all their depositors, but their entire liabilities, including trade creditors and all of them. Okay, so given that scenario, if you happen to be a depositor or even a trade creditor, the assurance is that you are going to be paid 100%. Okay, so the whole exercise or receivership, I would say, it's a moving parts. Okay, we have those scenarios where the companies are assetless. All right, they have nothing in their coffers. All right, and therefore their depositors are falling on the benevolence of governments. All right. We have that category. We have this other category, the second category, where over and above the benevolence of government by way of the funds that government has voted, all right, there is the chance that when we realize assets, we are able to make distributions and therefore they will get something. Okay, that's the second category. Then we have the third category, which is in a good way. And those are the operators who have approached me. We have engaged with them. We have assessed their total liability, and we have issued them statements of undertaking to sign. A lot of them have signed, some are signing, to confirm that they are able to pay all their creditors, not only depositors, but all their creditors, everything that is owed to them. You know, so these are the three main.
So holding those scenarios, using as an example, what I get from you that I'm assured that if I have 40,000 Ghana cedis at the institution, I'm assured of 100% payment of that one.
Well, George, it depends upon which category you fall.
I save with the institution. I save with that institution.
Yes, if you save with the institution where it has established with the receiver, myself, that is going to pay 100%, then you should be getting 100%. And indeed, we are looking at payments commencing before the end of this month.
But I'm saying that the government has also made a cover. So, and I believe that in the interaction with government and even the finance minister, I got the understanding that the necessary assessment and scenarios have been done, that whatever that has been provided took into all these things into consideration. So in insurance terms, enough cover has been provided for this to ensure that the necessary drawdowns can be made. So therefore, even based on government cover alone, wouldn't Auntie Mansa be assured of her 40,000 Ghana cedis?
Well, not necessarily, based on what we are seeing. Because, as part of our work, what we have done, and we are almost through with this, is to conduct what we call a situation assessment to ascertain the state of affairs of these companies at the dates of receivership. All right, and that is, and in doing that, some of them called for very detailed forensic and examinations, in bothering of bringing in IT experts to help us unravel transactions and all of them, look at them. And what we are realizing actually is that there has been a lot of underreporting. All right, there has been quite a number of underreporting in terms of what is shown on the face of the books and records as the depositor base isn't, in some cases, I must say, not in all cases, but in some cases isn't turning out to be the true and accurate picture. So we are really doing extra work in that regard. And therefore, whatever assessments or permutations that may have arisen before we came in should be examined with caution. And that is what we are doing.
So this 100% payment is based on what is available in that institution in terms of assets, and also what government has provided. If you, then I'm assured that St. George, if institution A had enough assets in their vaults, or literally, and government also provision as well, then you are assured of that 100% payment.
Well, George, I think the better news is this 100% payment is solely, exclusively from the resource of this company. Okay, exclusively from the resources of this company, these companies. Government no coming in. So it's a massive savings to governments, because these 20 companies with a combined depositor base in excess of 300 million have approached us and have said that they have the wherewithal to pay 100%. And therefore, government isn't coming in. We categorize them as voluntary payments, and they are coming in without support from government.
So there are institutions who have said that, listen, I have enough in my votes or in my account, I can pay everybody on my books. That's for a particular institution, irrespective of what government set aside for it.
Certainly.
So these are the conditions, basically. So that these are the conditions, right?
Well, conditions in terms of...
As in the 100% payment on the explain.
Yes, I mean, where that category is concerned, yes, it's based on that, because what they are saying and what we establish with them is the total liability position of these companies, maybe say 100, all right? And then the composition of these, those exposed, could be GRA, could be depositors, could be trade creditors, summing up to 100, all right? And then they have convinced us that they have the resources to settle all 100. Okay, taking off with, say, GRA, that is based on the order that I set out to you, you know, paying everything on their own sweat, based on their own resources, without recourse to government at all.
You deal with documents and letters and all those things, but I remember again, and sorry to bring back those interactions I had with Ken Ofriatta. He said that they could provide about, or they are making provision about 2 to about 3 billion Ghana cedis for this thing. If you watch some of the statement that was issued by Bank of Ghana, we understand that these institutions that have been collapsed held deposit about 2.3 billion Ghana cedis. I don't know whether that's a situation that you also have. If an institution A has enough assets on this book, then I'm assured of my 100% payment.
Certainly. I mean, if the institution has assets, okay, quality assets, to pay 100%, and you have invested, or you're a customer of that company, and you have a valid claim on the company, very much so. I mean, you will be entitled to the 100%, certainly.
What, in terms of the deposit that these institutions that have lost their license to operate, what have you been privy to in terms of the amount that they are holding?
Are you talking about the savings and loans?
The savings and loans.
Well, the savings and loans, I'll say that it is very early days yet. I was only appointed on Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. And my men have moved into position. And as I speak to you, we have taken control effectively and taking hold of the books and records. That is where we are now. We are now about to commence the process of examining the books to ascertain what the assets are, the types of assets, who owes and who is owed, and all of them. You know, so that's at this point, there is no picture painted on my part and for me. All right, so I can answer that having crossed that bridge.
Let's come to another critical point of this discussion about the fate of the workers. Kwame Mensah works with one of these companies, maybe Women's World Bank and all the rest. You are telling me that from even the Bank of Ghana statement that some of them will be engaged and others who want to opt out will be given their severance package. Help me out. What will be the level of, how is this engagement going to be worked out?
Well, before I get to that, I speak to that, let me just correct a position. All workers who are due severance, whether they move on or are retained by me as consultants, right, would be entitled to submit claims for their severance. All right, so these are historic claims. All right, as at the date of receivership, that is on the 16th of August. All right, any claim due any worker, be it severance, be it outstanding severance, crystallizes. All right, that is one thing. If it turns out that I take on the worker as a consultant working with me, his claim still remains valid, subject to validation and all of them. If it turns out that he doesn't want to work with me, or for whatever reason, I have no use for him, all right, then of course I'm not going to retain him as a consultant, but his claim also remains valid. Am I clear?
Yeah, you're making
yes,
sense, yeah.
His claim remains valid. So that's the first thing I need to point out. Second thing I need to say, which is of utmost importance, is as we move in, that is my reps move in, and we secure the books and records, and we take control over the operations of these companies, right? The workers who we now call former workers, actually, are critical for us. We need them initially to work with them, I mean, to work with us, for us, for them to clarify things to us, for them to help us locate who the borrowers are and even how much is owed and all of them. So I think the plea is that, or the authority instruction now is, every worker should come to work on Monday and should work with us. I will, in due course and very quickly, issue contract letters to them for them to come and work with me as consultants. So they will be working with my reps on the ground. They would also be my reps.
But that's those who would want to work with you.
Precisely, those who would want to work with me. You know, the assurance I'm giving them here and now is that they are welcome to work with me, and I will give them an initial contract as consultants to work with me. But if it turns out that you want to move on, that is very well. I have no control over who you work for, whether you work for me or not. You can exercise that right and then move on. That is fine.
How soon would this contract, this thing be issued to these workers to give them that, again, legal comfort?
Well, we are looking at this week. We think that we should be in the position to issue this week. We have engaged sufficiently with our lawyers, and we think we have a decent draft contract that I can execute and issue to the workers.
That could be a good contract, some would say, not something that will make them worse, or some would say.
Well, I can't speak to that now, but based on what, I mean, how I have been conducting these things, I mean, this assignments, workers are hardly worse off because they are short-term contracts and there's a risk attached to them, you know, so many things come into the equation. Of course, affordability is also key, you know, but generally, no.
So what about those who would want to move on? How soon would they also be able to get their severance?
Well, they would also go through the motions of creditor claims. They would also have to submit their claims. And theirs is also quite, I wouldn't say different, but it's a bit unique, because what usually happens is they organize themselves into groups. They will get a union rep, and then we would get a labor consultant to work with us. We'll go through the process of negotiating and agreeing these claims. And based on the amounts we negotiate and agree, then we make payments depending upon what we have.
So it's tied to certain conditions being met before you can assure them that, yes, you get your severance?
Well, I won't say conditions, but processes, because we need to engage with them where their severance pay is concerned, the element is concerned. Where it's a matter of outstanding salary, you know, over a period within a category that is preferred. Of course, subject to the quantum and timing of realization of assets, we should be in the position to pay them when we have these funds.
Now, so one would say that, again, judging from what has happened with the microfinance space, again, is there any projection that you're working that holding every condition constant, we should be able to bring a finality to this whole receivership process for the, so no, it's a difficult one for the savings and loans as well?
Well, for the savings and loans, and again, as I did indicate with the microfinance, we qualify by, say, substantial completion, because it's only over when all the legal suits have been dispensed with, and that takes quite a bit of time. But substantial completion, we give ourselves between, say, 3 to 4 years. We should say by year 4, it should have been considerably downsized.
And you watched that great interaction George Riafio of our business team had with the receiver of the banks. He works with PWS, that's PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC should be. And Eric Nipah was telling us about what could be the way forward for customers who have been caught in all this, merely more so what could be done to make sure that they salvage their deposit or investment. But in the meantime, we have to continue on other related financial matters. We'll do all that when we come back next.